Okay, so the time has come. I've got to decide something about this Galaxy S20 Ultra. I've used the phone now for a couple of weeks, and I really, yeah, I like the phone a lot. Let me start out by saying that I like the phone a lot. However, there are some things that I want to go over while I talk about the phone that impact whether or not it matters that I like the phone or I don't. The day has come, the day when I have to make the decision whether or not this is the phone that's going to replace my iPhone 11 or if I'm going to keep on going with the iPhone 11. Now, if I were to just go on the merits of this phone, if I were just to go on what this phone offers and all of the features that it has and the build quality of it and all of those things, then it'll really be a no-brainer in terms of whether or not this is a better, more feature-rich phone. The Galaxy S20 Ultra is an incredibly feature-rich phone. Let's make no mistake about that. And it is an improvement over the Galaxy S10 from last year. With last year's Galaxy S10, the fingerprint reader was not nearly as nice. Everything is smooth. It is just a very nice experience all the way around. I have had no real issues with hiccuping or stuttering or any kind of lag whatsoever, so I've really enjoyed my use of the phone up to this point. I have to say that it's one of the best Samsung phones that I've used, and that's part of the problem. In terms of using this phone, it has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, which is incredible. I know I say I don't mind the screen on the iPhone 11, and I don't, but this screen is something else entirely. Watching YouTube videos on it or anything like that has been all very, very incredibly nice. I have used the stock launcher for the entire time that I've been using it, and I found the stock launcher to be pretty good for the most part. One UI keeps getting better as time goes on, and I have to admit that this version of One UI has been really, really good. There are some things that bother me about it. I don't like these notifications because they're really, like, they'll build up to, say, 13, but there'll really not be 13 notifications. So it's really kind of annoying, and it'll happen on Gmail as well as anything else. The Samsung slide over information thing is still totally useless. There's nothing in here that it doesn't even really give very good news coverage. It's just mostly advertisements for other Samsung stuff. So I wish that they would go away from this. In all honesty, just tapping on the search bar and going over here gives you a much better ways to get into the information that you're looking for. It's much more customized. Google, for better or worse, knows more about you than Samsung does, so it is more targeted, and it's just overall better. I do like this feature, although there's one thing that bothers me. See here, I wish that this search bar and this app were connected to one another. I don't understand why Chrome is not connected to the search bar. If there's anybody out there who can tell me why Chrome is not connected to the search bar, I would be more than grateful to learn that information. In terms of the feel of the phone in the hand, it really does feel very nice. It is a very tall phone. Just to give you a little bit of scale, here is the iPhone 11 next to it. Just to give you a little bit of scale, here's the iPhone 11 next to it. It is very tall, and it is also very heavy, very thick. It's thick as well. I think part of that is because we want to have that big old battery in there, which is nice and everything. But yeah, I mean, it gives it a solid feel. Whenever I've reviewed Samsung phones in the past, I've liked to try this tapping to see how much space it sounds like there's in there, because this phone feels very solid, and it sounds like there's a decent amount of space in there, whereas yeah, that's always been, so it's a little bit, I realize this is a silly kind of thing to be doing, but iPhones always feel like there's no flex when you squeeze them. It just feels like one solid slab of stuff. And Samsung phones haven't always felt like that. But this one, I mean, there's a little bit of give on the back, but otherwise it really does feel pretty good. Like I said, the fingerprint reader is working much better than the fingerprint reader ever has on any Samsung phone, especially the under-display fingerprint reader. The one thing, I know that a lot of people love notifications. I am not one of them. I do not love notifications. And one of the problems that I have is that by default, Android always gives you way too many notifications. And it takes me forever to go through and shut them all off. Like, you know, I turned off all of the little bubbles on my iPhone, and I just dislike notifications in general. I have a very simple layout here. As you can see, I've just got a stock wallpaper. I've got the weather. I've got the Google search bar, which is mostly hidden because it's in black there. And then I've got the 5 icons across the bottom, which are the ones that when I first set up a phone, these are the ones that I use the most often. I usually don't keep the Play Store in there because I usually don't need to go to the Play Store because I don't download very many apps. And then over here, I have my Audible, I have my Apple Music, I have Twitter, Instagram, both YouTube apps that I use, Gmail, Discord. They did reduce the angles on the sides of the screen, but for some reason I find that I still do have a lot of inadvertent touches where I just accidentally start a YouTube video or I accidentally hit this like I just did a second ago. And there's just, the Samsung screens seem so sensitive, and I can't quite figure out why they're so sensitive or what I'm doing wrong, but they are. They are very sensitive, and that is a big problem for me because I keep hitting it. But if you look, I mean, I'm going to clear everything out. So close all, and then it just takes a second to open up. Now, I'm not a big fan of speed tests. If you watch the channel at all, you'll know that I'm not a big fan of speed tests. Speed tests are artificial in many, many ways, but one of the ways is that an individual can never press the button, press the icon on 2 different things at the same time. And hope to get any kind of scientific result. Let's just say that the Snapdragon 865 on this, the UFS 3 memory that's on there, all that kind of stuff is really, really fast, and you're not going to have any kind of problem with it. Now, the one thing that I can't speak to, the one thing that I really haven't been able to speak to for the last couple of years is whether or not the Samsung phones maintain their speed over more than a 6-month period, because I haven't actually used a Samsung phone for more than 6 months over the past couple of years. A lot of people think that I'm not a big fan of Samsung phones, and that's not exactly the case. I really do like Samsung phones. I think that the look is really great. I think that the build on this particular one is much better than it has been in the past. They're just little fiddly things that bother me more about Samsung phones and Android phones in general than typically bother me when I'm using an iPhone. And I don't know exactly why that is. One of the questions people have asked me is this phone too big? And I would have to say that it depends on what you're defining as too big. It is big. It's probably the biggest phone that I've used. It's at least as big as any Note phone that I've used. It's thin, so you can still hold it well in the hand, but it is very tall. And I do find that this giant camera hump here does alter the weight of it a little bit, to the point where it's a little bit weighted toward the back, but that's not a bad thing per se. It has a nice heft to it. One thing I don't like about the phone this time around is that they put the volume over here and the power. This is the power, this is the volume. I'm not a big fan. I like to have the power over here, but the volume always falls nicely under my thumb here, so I can use power and volume and not have to work around. And so I don't know why they had to switch that. I don't know what the real deal is there. I really wish they would have kept it over on this side. That would have just been so much easier for me. I'm not always a big fan of the colors that Samsung chooses. I mean, the blacks and the whites that they choose are always great, but they kind of don't ever have secondary colors that I'm a big fan of. Last year with the Note series, with the Note 9, they had a blue and yellow that was nice, but I'm not really a blue and yellow person. They usually have white, black, and some colors that I'd never be interested in. But this year they gave us this gray, which actually is one of my favorite colors that I've seen on a phone in quite some time. So I'm glad that we have this option. I don't know what option you guys might be going for. And so cosmetically, the looks are great. However, we do have to talk about this. That is a gigantic camera hump. You couldn't fit two of these on here. It's so big. And I realize that there's a lot of technology in there. I realize that there's a lot of stuff going on that you need it to be that big. But in all honesty, when we talk about the camera, you're going to see that the 100 times zoom, the 100 megapixel, all the different stuff that's there, it doesn't really make that big a difference in the camera department. Mechanically, this camera works better than a lot of other Samsung phones that I've used. The one thing that I'm not sure about that would really impact me if I were to keep it as a video maker is whether or not they still have the time limits on video, on taking video. I think in 4K there was a 10-minute time limit, and I'm not sure if that time limit has been removed, but if it hasn't been, then that would be a no-go for me. I would not be able to continue to use this phone. Let's just be straight up here. The 100 times zoom is a ridiculous feature that looks terrible. You've got 10, you've got 4, you've got 2, you've got 100 times, and it's just not really anything that is necessary. And I wouldn't mind if it wasn't necessary if it looked good. If you could just say, oh well, you know, it's not really useful, but it looks great. You've got your wide angle lens, you've got your ultra wide, and then you've got this super duper fancy 100 megapixel bloody blah blah 5 times zoom. See, look, I didn't even touch the screen. I didn't even touch the screen, and it went away. So that's really that's really annoying to me, because like if it just feels my finger. And there's even a setting in here to make it more sensitive to your finger. And I don't want it to be more sensitive to my finger because it's already really sensitive to my finger. You've got your normal beauty modes and different filters and that kind of thing. The camera is full featured in the way that you would want it to, but I still find that it's more difficult for me to open the camera on the Galaxy S20 Ultra or any Samsung or Android phone and just point and shoot and take a great picture, whereas I can do that a lot more easily when I'm working with an iPhone. I'm sorry to say it. I know it's going to make people mad, but when I use the camera, usually I'm opening, I'm pointing, I'm shooting, and I hope that I've captured the thing that I want to capture. If I want to slow down and sort of dial things in and all that, then this is great. But I've had to try several times to get pictures that I wanted to get with this camera, whereas with the iPhone, I haven't had to do that. It's just a much easier phone to open up and point and shoot and take the picture. And I think that's what the majority of people do when they take pictures with their phones. All of these other fancy features that come along with this phone are not really all that necessary. They're not really all that important. They're just, how should I say, superfluous. Superfluous is the word that I'll use. Superfluous. Maybe that's the title of my review. Galaxy S20 Ultra, superfluous. That brings me to the end of the line here, where I kind of have to put the rubber to the road and discuss whether or not I would buy this phone, whether or not I think you should buy this phone, and whether or not I think that this phone really serves any general purpose whatsoever. I'll say this first. It's a very nice phone. It's an incredibly powerful phone. It does everything that you would want it to do extremely well. In saying that, I also will tell you that it does a lot of things that the majority, that 99.9% of all people would never care about. The 120 hertz screen is nice, but I got to admit, I don't really notice it all that much when I'm going back and forth between screens. The iPhone seems fine. Now, that's not to say 120 hertz isn't nice. I just think that a lot of people are getting excited over 120 hertz when there's not really any need to be that excited about it. So there is a certain want versus need factor that's going on with the Galaxy S20 Ultra. Everybody wants a great phone. Everybody wants a phone that's going to do a lot of different things. Everybody wants the battery life to be great. Everybody wants every option that they could possibly ever hope to have in a camera. Everybody wants these things. But when you're asking $1,400 for the privilege of having those things, when does want sort of give way to need? And in my estimation, while this phone is just a super phone, It is absolutely incredible in every way, and Samsung should be proud of like the design that they've done. I don't think that anyone should buy this phone. I don't think you should buy this phone. The cork-sniffing Android people are all going to buy this phone, and they're going to talk about how it's the greatest phone ever until the next Samsung phone comes out, and then they'll cork-sniff that, and they'll have something to say. But no one should buy this phone. This phone is for a customer that doesn't exist. It's for a customer that if you will never walk into a carrier store and say, oh, that phone's only $1,400? Yeah, I'll take that one. Every single time a customer will walk into the store, they'll see this, they'll be like, oh, that's nice. How much does that cost? Oh, it costs $1,400. How much does that one cost? Oh, well, that's a little bit better. I'll take the cheapest one you have. That's the way it's going to work. So Samsung has made a nice showcase phone here. It's made a very nice showcase phone that is really something to behold and to hold and all of those kinds of things. Suddenly I'm playing a game. See, this is like, how am I playing a game? I don't even know how that happened. How am I playing a game? I don't want to play a game. Stop playing a game. I didn't even know that game was on here. These are the little things that happen when I'm using Android phones that really, really annoy me. So at the end of the day, the question is, would I replace my iPhone and use this phone all the time? When you look at the phone itself, everything that it promises, everything that it does, the general niceness of the phone, yes, I mean, I could say absolutely I would. But when I go back through and the little annoyances, as you've just seen, as well as the price, are the things that keep me from being able to say I would buy this phone. And I did spend my own money to buy this phone. I spent $1,400 of my own dollars to get this phone, and I'm gonna go get those $1,400 back because at the end of the day, I just can't see the benefits of having this phone outweighing the costs. Okay, so let me know down in the comments what you think about the Galaxy S20 Ultra. Do you think there's even a customer that exists out there in the world that should be buying this phone? I really can't say that I know of anyone who should buy this phone. I can't recommend that anyone buy this phone. It is a very nice phone, but the price, the performance, the little things that just aren't going right with the phone make it so that I can't recommend anybody get it. I mean, they were supposed to fix the autofocus thing. The autofocus thing is only sort of fixed. And it just seems like if you're going to sell a phone for $1,400, that phone better be ready to go out the door. Otherwise, you're really not doing your customers any favors. Not to mention that, but in the past couple of days, it's come to my attention that Samsung is now already discounting this phone. They're discounting this phone by a couple of $100s, or at least some of the S-line phones. So it hasn't even been out for 3 weeks, and they're discounting the phone. So just, if you have to buy a phone, you want to buy a phone, I would say the S20 Plus is probably the way to go, although that is very expensive too. It's the nicest balance between features and price that Samsung is offering this year. Again, let me know what you think down in the comments. I really do appreciate you being here. My name is Jason, sometimes known as the JTL. This is Painfully Honest Tech. Tech so honest it hurts. Until the next time, I'm out.